Flygon was once on top of the world, a wonderful dragon ground type Pokemon with the excellent ability Levitate. This was a staple of both Gen 3 and 4 competitive play that, at the time, seemed like it would always be good. And then Garchomp came along. Garchomp was legal in OU for the first time, Generation 5, and it was an instant success competitively. It shares the exact same typing with Flygon, but just has higher stats and better options. Why would anyone use Flygon anymore? Flygon's usage plummeted, and overnight, it became forgotten, obsolete. There are many such cases in competitive Pokemon, unfortunately. Superstars, once at the peak of their careers, thrown directly into the trash as soon as the next game releases a better version of the same fellow. Let's explore some examples of Pokemon going obsolete overnight. One of the most notable and, in my opinion, tragic examples of such a phenomenon is with Heracross, one of my personal favorite Pokemon. Heracross is a very honorable Pokemon, a bug-fighting type released in Gen 2. It debuted to competitive success with OU viability in Gen 2 thanks to its Rest Talk Mega Horn set, but Gen 3, the next game, was where it really rose to the peak of its career. Heracross in Gen 3 is probably the best wall breaker in the whole format. This bug-fighting type has access to Stab Mega Horn, an uncharacteristically high power attack for the early games. Against many of the tier's most common physical walls like Swampert, Flygon, Milotic, and Suicune, this Mega Horn is devastating. Heracross has access to Swords Dance to enhance its breaking power further, Focus Punch for big reads and a way to punish switch-ins. And Heracross has some great offensive abilities too. Guts is excellent on this, because Guts not only grants an attack boost if you're statist, it makes you immune to the effects of burn. If you get burned, it won't hurt you, it will make you more powerful. Burn is a common way to deal with physical attackers, but against Heracross this won't work. Another option on Heracross is the ability Swarm, which is actually really powerful because Heracross can substitute all the way down to low health, and once it's at low health, Swarm will activate, granting bonus bug-type damage. With Salakberry for a speed boost and those Swarm-boosted Mega Horns, this is one of the scariest offensive sweepers in all of Gen 3. This is such a fun Pokemon, and one of the things that makes Gen 3 great, in my opinion, is the presence of Heracross and the healthy counterbalance it adds as an incredible matchup into defensive, greedy teams. Unfortunately though, in the very next generation, Heracross would start to have some struggles. Seemingly this would be a good generation for Heracross, as it has all the same traits it used to. It even has new options like Close Combat for a more reliable form of Fighting Stab, one of the best new moves added to the franchise at the time. You got superior rock coverage with Stone Edge as a new option, and the item Choice Scarf is another big get. But unfortunately the tides were shifting in Gen 4, and Heracross actually got overtaken by one of its former rivals. Breloom is a similar Pokemon to Heracross in Gen 3, and they're pretty even as fighting-type breakers. Breloom has the advantage of Spore, Heracross has more immediate firepower and better mid-game value. But in Gen 4, Breloom got way better. They gave this Poison Heal, which is an incredible ability. It has the all-new Fighting Stab of Superpower, which it previously didn't have. And it has Grass Physical Stab now in the form of Seed Bomb. Breloom got so much more to take advantage of in Generation 4, and rose to be pretty much the new best physical wall breaker of the tier, leaving Heracross in the dust a little bit. On top of that, some more exciting new fighting types came out, like Infernape, the new fire-type starter, who has higher speed, access to options like Mach Punch for priority, U-turn for pivoting, even mixed coverage, a little bit more set variety too. And there was even Lucario, a new fighting steel-type Pokemon, who also has the benefit of priority moves. It's immune to Sandstorm thanks to its steel typing, and it's just a little bit better and more diverse as a breaker than Heracross is. That 85 base speed was perfectly suitable for the Gen 3 environment, as its job was to outrun slower Pokemon. It's much faster than most defensive teams, but Gen 4 increased the power level a little bit, and 85 speed is just not going to cut it anymore in this world. Breloom is actually slower, but it has Spore. It has Poison Heal for effective status immunity, and it has far better options generally. It's much more consistent. So Heracross became obsolete very quickly, and many people forget that this was once a good competitive Pokemon, because it feels so long ago, and it was, but it's unfortunate, because I really like Heracross, and it absolutely fell off a cliff from game to game. In an instant, this Pokemon's career was over. But I will not forget you, Heracross. Another tragedy is what happened to Swampert. Swampert debuted in Gen 3 as one of the starter Pokemon, and it was immediately successful and competitive. As a water ground type, it has impeccable defensive typing with only one weakness to grass. Swampert was very well suited to the Gen 3 metagame, matching up perfectly against the tier's most prominent physical threats, including Tyranitar, Aerodactyl, Salamence, and Metagross. And Swampert has outstanding set variety in Gen 3 as well. It can go in a completely defensive direction if you want, really leaning into that typing, running Protect for Chip Heal, Toxic to stall out the enemy, and options like Roar and Refresh, sometimes even Curse and Rest. Swampert can go somewhere in the middle with coverage and attacking moves such as Hydro Pump, Earthquake, Ice Beam, and Focus Punch, but still investing in some defensive stats to make you sturdy against the Metagross and Aerodactyl and Tyranitar. Or you can go fully aggressive with Swampert if you like, going with speed and special attack or even physical attack, and just leaning into those excellent attacking options you have. Endeavor Swampert with Selakberry is another fun aggressive option. In Gen 4, Swampert's excellence persisted as their typing remained great, and it even gained access to the new option of Stealth Rock, one of the most desired and coveted new moves, Stealth Rock being the new most powerful entry hazard in the game. Swampert benefited quite a bit from the physical special split as well, as it could now use physical, water and ice type moves for coverage instead of relying purely on special attacks. So what happened? This seemed like such a competitive mainstay, with everything going for it, an elite level typing, incredibly solid stats, and diverse options. Well, Gen 5 came around and Swampert started to struggle for the first time in its life. For a few reasons. Gen 5 is a pretty unique metagame, and this is a world where permanent rain exists. For that reason, rain teams are one of the strongest team styles in the game, and overwhelming enemies with a bunch of water type threats is a genuinely good and powerful idea. Threats like Specs, Keldeo, and Gyarados with a Choice Band or Choice Scarf are commonplace. For that reason, it became a little bit more worthwhile to use a different water ground type here, Gastrodon. Gastrodon became superior to Swampert because it is completely immune to water thanks to its ability Storm Drain. Even though Gastrodon has worse stats than Swampert, it has it beat in other areas. It has recovery, access to the move Earth Power, and of course that incredibly valuable water immunity. Another option some teams chose to use was Seismitoad, who has Water Absorb. Even though Seismitoad doesn't have recovery like Gastrodon does, it gets healed when hit by water moves, which is incredibly valuable, and it has Stealth Rock. Using Swampert was just a little bit worse than these other options because of how much more important water immunity was now. On top of that, using Swampert as a general bulky ground type was worse because better options for that came out too. Landorus Therian is of course the most obvious new competitor as a bulky ground type. Landorus Therian is faster, more threatening, it has a similarly elite level typing with ground flying, and the ability Intimidate is just incredible. On top of this, Landorus Therian has U-turn, allowing it to pivot and be more proactive. Landorus Therian is the new blanket physical check to things that can also output a bit of damage at the same time. Swampert is feeling slow compared to Landorus Therian. It's feeling less good in this metagame. It can't pivot, it can't really get much value outside of just stealth rocking, so nobody really used Swampert anymore. If you want a water ground type, you're using Gastrodon or Seismitoad. And if you want a general physical check ground type, you're probably using Landorus Therian. Not to mention Gliscor and Garchomp also kind of taking Swampert's job. And that remained true pretty much for the rest of the series. Swampert has always been worse than all of these options since then, and even Quagsire is a little bit more desirable than Swampert in modern games because it has Unaware, which ignores defensive boosts. They at least threw Swampert a bone, finally allowing it to use a pivoting option with Flip Turn in Gen 8, but this was still far from enough to make it anywhere near as good as the classic Landorus Therian. So yeah, in the transition from Gen 4 to 5, Swampert basically became obsolete overnight. Unfortunate, because this is one of my favorite defensive Pokemon designs of all time. I love its presence in Gen 3 and Gen 4, honestly. Despite my issues with that metagame, Swampert is not one of them. But that's just the way it goes. Better things came out and the players started using them. There is of course Mega Swampert in Gen 6 and 7, but I believe that to be a whole separate Pokemon. It doesn't even operate the same way. Base Swampert is who I'm talking about here, and it became obsolete. Another dreadful fall off in competitive Pokemon. The once elite level Metagross. In Gen 3 when Metagross came out, many believe that this is the best Pokemon in the whole game. It's certainly S tier at the very least. Metagross runs the world with its incredible stats, outstanding typing, the impossibly powerful Meteor Mash, which has a chance to raise attack, fantastic physical coverage, the ability Clear Body, which makes you immune to Intimidate, and of course Metagross's signature Explosion. Metagross is famous for being the most powerful explosion user in Gen 3, able to even one-hit KO Skarmory if it has a Choice Band equipped, and KO just about anything else that's unresisted. It's hard to live a Metagross Choice Band explosion with anything. Metagross is a very important part of Gen 3, as it is an enabler for offensive teams. It not only checks important threats, like rock types and Snorlax, it takes that defensive play and turns it into aggression, immediately putting the enemy on the back foot and sometimes even forcing them into a terrible trade. With agility, Metagross can be a sweeper. With mixed attacking sets, it has surprise value. The Pokemon is diverse, central, and top tier. In Gen 4, Metagross maintained its OU position and is still incredibly good. Not quite as good as it was in Gen 3, but still powerful. Metagross gained Stealth Rock and options like Bullet Punch, as well as the Type Berries, helping it live important hits and strike back with lethal force. Agility Metagross remained an excellent sweeper set, and Lead Metagross, aiming to set Stealth Rock and explode afterwards, was also a popular option, especially with a Kustap Berry. But then Gen 5 came around and Metagross started to feel its age a little bit. After 2 straight games of excellence in competitive, the power level rose. The move Explosion was severely nerfed in Gen 5, dealing half as much damage as it used to, and that was a big blow to Metagross of course, but there's more to the story than just that. The addition of Ferrothorn to the game was terrible news, not only because Ferrothorn did Metagross's job better as a Steel-type Stealth Rock setting Pokemon, but Metagross matched up so poorly into Ferrothorn, taking significant damage from its Iron Barbs and just dealing pitiful damage to it. Ferrothorn is the new king of Steel-type utility Pokemon, and the ever-presence of it makes Metagross really tough to use effectively. Excadrill is another new Steel-type Stealth Rock setter that is a bit more fitting for the Gen 5 metagame, and generally just a better choice in competitive overall. Excadrill has Rapid Spin for utility, is more aggressive with higher speed, and the Sand Force ability, which has its uses, as well as Mold Breaker for another option. The more aggressive Metagross sets basically don't exist anymore, as Agility Metagross is just not as widely threatening as it once was. Everything Metagross excelled at before is just being done better by competitors now, and there's little reason to use this Pokemon anymore, unless you count its Mega Form, which once again I consider to be a separately evaluated Pokemon. Metagross was never the same. It has never risen to the heights of its Gen 3 and 4 excellence, and it probably never will. This is a Pokemon from a before time. A top-tier, world-running force that cannot keep up with modern times. Next we have Forretress, a forgotten legend of competitive. Introduced in Gen 2, this was a great Pokemon when it first came out. Bug Steel is one of the best type combos in the game, extremely complementary, and only weak to a single type, that being Fire. Forretress immediately established itself as a defensive utility Pokemon with its massive defense stat and options like Spikes and Rapid Spin. It also happens to have a fairly high attack stat of 90 and can be a bit more proactive than some similar Pokemon as a result. It has Explosion, letting it trade with enemies, and in Gen 2 this was a great choice. In Gen 3 these traits felt amplified, I think, as Forretress with its incredible type combo, the ability to stack 3 layers of Spikes now, and a Rapid Spin on the same set, its Sand immunity in a world dominated by Tyranitar, and even Earthquake to hold its own against the new and improved Magneton with its Magnet Pull, gave Forretress so much value. Forretress is incredible in Gen 3 OU and is consistently seen at top level play. As an absolute Swiss Army knife of utility, this guy can do it all, and even keeps aggression up with access to Explosion. Forretress has proven itself diverse too, with weird sets like Zap Cannon to paralyze incoming Gengar. In Gen 4, Forretress is yet again really good. Probably a bit worse than it was in Gen 3, but still very much viable. Especially since it received Stealth Rock as a new option, and it's one of the few things in the game with Spikes, Rapid Spin, Stealth Rock, and Sand immunity all in one. It even has Payback to punish incoming Ghost types trying to Spin Block, which is a really powerful new option. But then, in Gen 5, it finally happened. Forretress actually got buffed in Gen 5, funnily enough, which makes this hurt even more. The ability Sturdy was reworked in Gen 5 to basically act as a focus sash, allowing you to live a hit from full HP. In previous generations, it only provided an immunity to one-hit KO moves, useless in competitive singles, but now it was actually pretty good. It also gained the new ability Overcoat, granting an immunity to Hail and Sandstorm damage. It's already immune to Sandstorm, but Hail immunity could come in handy. The new option of Volt Switch was also significant, a pivoting move, allowing you to be more proactive and find entry points for allies. A very good new option that makes up for the nerfing of Explosion. But at the end of the day, none of that matters when Ferrothorn exists, and Ferrothorn was a real paradigm shift for competitive Pokemon. Ferrothorn has superior stats to Forretress. Grass Steel typing has its downsides compared to Bug Steel, but that water resistance is pretty important in a world with permanent rain, making Ferrothorn feel pretty good. Iron Barbs is such a good fit on a Pokemon like this because enemies are constantly making contact with you, and that chip damage really adds up. Iron Barbs, of course, deals damage to enemies that make contact with the Pokemon. And even though Ferrothorn does not have Volt Switch for pivoting, it probably has way better utility options, with Knockoff and Thunder Wave, and even Leech Seed. The attacks available to Ferrothorn also just fit better. Power Whip hits plenty of popular water and ground types that are everywhere, and Gyro Ball just deals pretty significant damage. Forretress is ranked OU in Gen 5 as well, but I also think this is an outdated ranking as the vast majority of teams just use Ferrothorn. They rarely use Forretress. Forretress is not completely without its uses at least. Overcoat actually gives it value on Hail teams, because Hail immunity is hard to come by, and its access to Rapid Spin and Volt Switch are still good. But its days as the incredibly solid and reliable defensive utility guy it was in early gens have come to an end, as Ferrothorn has completely usurped it in that department. And finally, the most tragic example of all is the case of Haxorus, a Pokemon that debuted in Gen 5 and became obsolete in the same generation. How terrible. When Haxorus first came out, it was great. This was a new mono-dragon type Pokemon with a clear intent behind its design as a wall breaker. Haxorus has an incredibly high 147 attack and a pretty solid 97 base speed. It has Dragon Dance to boost itself up, the classic physical options of Outrage, Earthquake, Superpower, and the ability Mold Breaker to ignore enemy abilities, giving it some added breaking power. Haxorus was the go-to dragon-type wall breaker that could ignorantly click Outrage and defeat entire teams sometimes, because this is back when Fairy didn't exist. But then Pokemon Black and White 2 came around, and an all-new Pokemon hit OU, Kyurem Black. Kyurem Black is a Pokemon a lot of people think should have been an Uber's Pokemon, but It ended up legal in OU, and this guy, with its even higher attack stat of base 170, an absurd attack stat, frankly, and even the same effect of Mold Breaker, with Terra Volt doing the exact same thing, ignoring abilities, just gave Haxorus no reason to be used anymore. Kyurem Black was the new guy who clicked Outrage ignorantly and had the highest attack stat and immediate breaking power, so why the hell would anyone use Haxorus anymore? The only advantage of Haxorus is its mono dragon typing, making it at least not rock wake, and its access to Dragon Dance as well, but there are just so many better Dragon Dance users in the format that outclass Haxorus, like Dragonite and Salamence. Garchomp is also generally better as a physical attacker that also has utility like Stealth Rock. So Haxorus became obsolete overnight in the very generation it was introduced in. And unfortunately, it never really got a chance to exist ever again. In Gen 6, the Fairy type was introduced, and while some Dragon types survived this severe nerf to their entire being, Haxorus was not one of them. This is a mono Dragon type. It has no other stab damage but Dragon. Its whole thing was spamming Dragon moves, and now that strategy just sucks because one Fairy type ruins your career. I think this is a huge shame because Haxorus is very cool and it just wasn't given a solid chance. Some people still play Pokemon Black and White 1 OU, which is a world without Kyurem Black where Haxorus is still good, but that's a very niche community. Most people play the most current version of Gen 5, which is Black and White 2. So there you have it, folks. Some Pokemon that were once excellent, becoming obsolete nearly overnight. Who's your favorite of these Pokemon? Mine would be Heracross. Let me know yours down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.